Ports. So India has more than 11,000 kilometers of shoreline, and along this shoreline, something's happening. New ports are being developed and built, such as Vizhinjam, the first deep-water shipment hub of India, or the new megaport Vadhavan. Others are being expanded, renovated, built up, and all of that, of course, is to fulfill India's vision of becoming a major player in the maritime world. But not only that, also to become a major manufacturing hub. And for both those goals, obviously, ports are the crucial part. You cannot have shipbuilding, you cannot have shipping without ports, but you also cannot be a world player in manufacturing if you don't have ports, because you need to get things in and out of the country. So this is what we're going to discuss here today. Where do we stand? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities that come from India's ports? And I'm very delighted that I have a distinguished panel. You've seen the names, you've heard them being introduced, of both Indian experts and international experts that we want to discuss the topic with. We will start with looking a little bit on where we stand when it comes to Indian ports. Then we'll move ahead and talk about investment and connectivity, digitalization and regulatory reform. And then finally, we will talk a little bit about the broader geopolitical implications of that. And obviously, I will make sure that you, the audience, have enough time to ask questions to our panelists. Now, let's get started. And the first question is actually to you, Sanjeev, sitting next to me. So with turnaround times now improving, what would you say is, or are the remaining structural constraints to becoming really world-class when it comes to port operations in India?
Thank you very much. The kind of policy changes that have come about in the last few years has made this happen. And it's still work in progress. But the framework which is required in terms of the new act, the Major Ports Authorities Act. Just this Parliament session, we had the Indian Ports Act, which have now become a reality, which gives a broad framework. The concession agreements which used to be there have been revamped and made more user-friendly. And the ports which used to be run by the port trusts themselves now are outsourced and run on PPP mode by the best in class. And that has resulted in these efficiencies kicking in. And while we do this, the digitization and getting all the stakeholders in the logistics ecosystem on board, we have a whole host of initiatives. Some of them are still to reach a stage where we are able to have complete multimodal kind of an integration. So that's work in progress. And ports going forward to be able to create the kind of supply chain which the customer expects end to end, and not just the port operation itself. That also is work in progress, so that the ports, instead of being a standalone operator, now they are looking at meeting the customer's requirement in terms of getting the stuff off the ship and delivering it. And the whole ecosystem is getting integrated and getting tracked. So that's work in progress, and the enactment and the kind of basic fundamental foundations have been laid. It's a question of all these stakeholders working together. Some of them have their own narrow kind of interest to be taken care of, but I'm sure the framework would address those requirements of theirs, and we should be able to move forward on these.
Hemant, I mentioned the new deep water transshipment hubs that are being developed right now in India. Could you explain to us, how do these deep water ports change scalability when you compare them to the existing, one might call them legacy ports?
Look, when you get more draft, you have the ability to get bigger ships, right? Now, even today, most of the shipping lines, they're upsizing. Your current berths, where let's say in a particular port, you could today fix to put two ships side by side, alongside the berth. Today, going forward, you will only be able to do one, right? So that's what is happening, because all shipping lines are trying to upsize the size of the vessel. And the more you get draft, the bigger the vessels, your efficiency increases. And exactly what we have been able to do over the years is to, over the last decade of reforms that we have been able to deliver as a country, our dwell time at the ports has reduced to half. Okay, that I think is the biggest efficiency that we have got. The outcome is that the CFSs have taken a beating, but that's a better version than the ports taking a beating. And I think this will also help in reducing the cost of logistics, which was double digits, which is now possibly coming to a single digit now as we speak. I think those are big efficiencies that we'll be able to deliver because of the draft.
Okay, we see bigger efficiency, larger scalability. Let's move things up or broadening the vision a little bit. Yoon Chung Choi, over to you. We talked about transshipment, and that is obviously something that is new for India. What implications will that have for other transshipment hubs in the region, notably Colombo, but also the Middle East?
Okay. Let me briefly share my thoughts on Indian government's policy. And I think in terms of policy-wise, I think the Indian government is really inviting really relevant and very wise policy scheme. For example, the Sagarmala project, which was introduced in 2015, and also the new one, Mahasagarmala project, which was just launched in last April. With those schemes clearly demonstrate the Indian government's strong will that it will reduce costs and it will also share the opportunities that are coming from the India's market. And similarly, I think the still very clear sign from the Indian government, if you look at the recently launched Indian government's project in Mumbai, which is, I think, is deep sea port, is really beneficial for Indian industry to be a regional hub for this transshipment transaction. So this reminds of the success story of Korea, which is Busan port. Busan port is now enjoying its from 6th or 7th largest, in terms of cargo, and transshipment base is the second largest one in worldwide, and it really worked very hard and in conjunction with the government's initiatives. So, for instance, after the 1995, the Great Hanshin earthquake, Japan really could now operate its transshipment port in Kobe and Osaka. And now South Korea is really becoming a regional hub and helping Japanese transshipment. Nowadays, 800,000 TEUs per year, Japanese cargo is exporting through the Busan port to the United States and European countries. So in this way, I think India can also get the opportunity to become a regional hub, and it will help not only India, but other regional countries, and it can transport this experience to other regional hubs, including Colombo in Sri Lanka and other regional countries too.
We heard Hemant talk about efficiency gains from the new investments and the newly built ports. Do you agree with that? And are these investments that are being made right now, are they actually future-proof, or are we maybe at times also trying to emulate a model of the past, which is bigger and bigger and bigger ships?
All right, let me try and break that question into two. So I think, first of all, the policy for India the last 11 years has been to accelerate and improve and debottleneck whatever capacity we already had. So all our major ports, plenty of them, went through strong debottlenecking processes, went through processes of adding incremental brownfield capacity. They went through privatization, PPP, as Sanjeev sir said very correctly. They went through intense amount of mechanization. They went through digitization. They went through rail connectivity projects. And then you also had the growth of the minor ports and capacity that was added there as well. Now we've gone to a capacity which is potentially at about 2 billion tons of port capacity, and we are currently at about 1.2 billion. 1.3 billion is where we are in terms of our cargo flows. So that's not a huge amount of margin, keeping in mind where we need to get to. So if I look at it from a slightly longer prism, we do need to build a lot more ports. I think we need to build ports which are future ready in terms of. I mean, when I got into shipping, I've been around the block for a bit now, since 25 years. The biggest ships that we had at that time were 6,000 TEU ships. The 24,000 TEU ships, I remember conversations where people would turn around and say is that, oh, in India, we're never going to see any of these giants coming in. We are consistently seeing 18 and 20,000 TEU ships. They're consistently coming to, various Hemant's terminals, my terminals in different parts of the country. So size scale, cascading scale is a reality. And of course, it's not just the container trade, right? We are a large VLCC market. We're a large LNG market. We are a large bulker market. And these are some of the biggest ships which are coming into this place. So whatever ports we plan have to be planned for, 25, 30 years hence, because this is infrastructure for the future. So no, I don't think we are, I think we probably need to do it now at a faster pace. So yes, you mentioned, Vizhinjam, Vadhavan, what's happening in Kandla, the expansion there, maybe Tuticorin, but there's also a lot happening on the Andhra coast. There's a lot happening in the Orissa coast. And so I think overall, probably we need another 15 large ports, each of them between 100 to 300 million ton capacity, to really meet the capacity need that we are as a country adding going forward. So my sort of comeback on that is that we need a lot more, and we need it quick. We need it now.
So lots of more ports are needed quickly, and that's an excellent segue actually to the next segment that I would like to talk about, and that is financing. Because if you want to build those ports and you want to build them quickly, you need money, capital. Hemant, you represent DP World, a major international port operator, not just port operator, but also ports, of course. If you look into an investment case such as India, if you want to commit capital, what kind of risk-sharing terms do you or does DP World look at when it decides where to invest and where not to invest?
It's a pertinent question because as we speak, there is some serious money that we have committed and it started to put in the port of Tuna Tekra. So look, it's reasonably simple. There is, like Dhruv said, exactly, there is enough demand. The country is growing. With the government's focus on manufacturing, there will be more exports. So, and not all raw material for manufacturing will be available within the country. So there will be imports again. So you have a solid business case, and with the homegrown consumption of the population at the age they are in the country, there is enough and more business case as long as the route to profitability is there. And when you are supporting manufacturing, when you are supporting infrastructure, the way we have, while I agree with Dhruv that there's enough and more to be done, like he wants 15 ports like yesterday, but the fact remains that there's a lot which has also been done in terms of debottlenecking, which has reduced the logistics cost to less than a double digits, more like a single digit number. There will be entrepreneurs who are going to get into manufacturing, get into trading, and this will definitely increase the demand for ports, and it drives home Dhruv's point of 15 ports. So from that perspective, when you have an economy which is booming at anything between 6.5 to 7% GDP, you are seeing solid consumption. There's a significant focus on manufacturing, which will lead to both import and export. There'll be trading. I mean, the IRR or the ROIs or the Rockies, whichever way you want to see it, is definitely going to work.
Eyvind, you represent Euronext in Oslo. From your perspective as somebody looking from the outside to the Indian market, what kind of governance or maybe disclosure requirements do you think would be necessary to lower the cost of capital for investments in port and logistics in India?
Well, to start at the transparency and regulation, I think the most important is that you have stable and secure frame requirements. You need the government actually can secure the investor that it will not happen big things and changes that will jeopardize the investment. So that's really important. And after that, as you said, it has to be communicated to the market. So transparency is extremely important. And what we see around the world, both in Asia, in Europe, and also other parts of the world, is that a lot of these ports are listed, and some of them do it quite well. And that's exactly because it's a good investment. You see it's a growth case, as you mentioned, a lot of the ports are growing and are more digitalized and more modern, and actually they invest like that. And if they actually see it's a good possibility for return on the investment and dividends and everything going forward, I think that's a good start. But to actually get investor in, they also must be secured or actually convinced they will not lose their investment or jeopardize everything. And in that regard, we know that extremely good transparency and also stable frame requirements and guarantees or at least securement from the government is extremely important.
Dhruv, you said you want 15 ports and you want them now. So apart from capital, when you look at the public side, in terms of approvals, policies, what would you say are the most important things that the public side can do in order to incentivize private operators to expand?
Yeah. So, and I'm also going to slip back into a question you asked me earlier as well. So, you're absolutely right. First of all, there are different types of ports. So ports are, you can have a mega hub port, which is on the main sea route dealing with the largest of ships. You can have a regional port. You can even have a coastal port. You can have a pure liquid port. So there are, ports for different purposes and different uses. And ports then, even in terms of the function they perform beyond being a gateway, that's ports which also serve as industrial hubs. So these are the different types of ports. Sorry, I'm also going to add a little bit about that point earlier in terms of financing. The funny part is that, and even for financing ports, you have different roles. So you have a role of a developer. I think the state can play a massive role in being the developer. I think just taking the point that my colleague just made is correct, because you actually have balance sheets of ports which are very strong today. The strong annuity yield which is there. I think there is ways that some of these balance sheets can be unlocked even further. Bonds could be raised, equity could be raised, which could then be used for developing and incubating the 15 ports I spoke about. You also have deep capital coming from various sovereign, quasi-sovereign firms around the world, which can also play a role in terms of helping incubate some of this. I think the government, and coming to the government piece, I think the government plays a massive role in terms of, and I think they have played a massive role in terms of India's PPP framework, where they've made they've taken away a lot of the pain, where they say, okay, listen, we will complete land acquisition. We will even complete a certain amount of basic infrastructure development. We will make sure that environmental clearances are done in a proper manner, and then handed over in a manner to the next phase of developers, which is where you start seeing private expertise in that phase of development, which starts coming in. So I really think it's more about creating the framework which remains attractive to accelerate private investment, and government can play a role by doing those activities in which they are going to be most efficient and leaving to the private developers and private operators, and there could be a series of them in that chain, to do what they do best. So I would say that's really what government should be doing what they're good at, and leaving the rest to the experts.
Sanjeev, maybe you want to add to that, and I also have a question for you. Could you explain a little bit the Maritime Development Fund? What will that mean when we speak about investment?
Yeah,
and
just
timelines?
to touch on some of the questions
Yeah.
which you just mentioned. The financing part, let me tell you, India has been a great success story, particularly the port side. The port side was one of the first areas where the PPP started, and we've had a long experience. And thanks to the kind of inputs we got from our friends here, it's been refined over the years. And today we have come to a stage where we have a very stable regime, which assures everyone that what is bid out by the ports is a very, very safe investment. And the kind of growth story that which India has, each of these bids which have gone out have been really, really attractive. So we have come to a stage of maturity as far as port development is concerned, that finance is not a constraint. And ports have got that kind of experience to be able to structure it in a manner that the things which the government is supposed to do, they normally do it upfront. For example, the existing ports, the berths which have been given out have been all lapped up at decent premium. And with that money which these ports have now, they have been trying to develop, for example, Vadhavan, which has just gone for bidding. It's an absolute greenfield port out in sea, which requires a substantial investment in terms of breakwater and so on. So the Port Authority has taken upon itself to create the backwater, the water break and so on. And the terminal development itself has gone for a PPP bid. So with the basic infrastructure, land, etc., having been provided, these become very attractive investment. So the structuring experience which our ports have now, we are able to attract enough private sector fund, and none of the terminals which have gone out for bid have had a problem in terms of financing. They all are bankable. And for example, the recent one which has been done for Vadhavan is going to be on a HAM model, which is going to be hybrid annuity, which has been tried on the roadside in a big way. Roadside also, and as far as roads and ports both, the infrastructure growth story of India has been excellent, and the revenues which these projects generate make the servicing, even if it's done out of a bank kind of a contribution, they have been serviced without any kind of a problem. And therefore, the HAM model with borrowings from the bank have also successfully been done on the roadside, and now it's being tried on the port side. Even without the HAM model, the simple PPP models which we have tried for the port earlier have all been taken up without any. If there have been issues of some kind, they have been retailored to make it attractive enough for the private operator. On the transshipment hub, again, with the vessels becoming larger, we have Vizhinjam, we have Vadhavan, which is coming up, Kandla, Tuna, Tekra, the Galathea Bay project. So all these things are ready to take off, and hopefully this extra expenditure that our people had to incur, about $1,000, $2,000 odd dollars per container which used to come in, we should be able to save on that once these transshipment hubs becomes operational. So on both these fronts, I think there's good progress. And with these things coming up, I'm sure the kind of efficiencies we talked of right at the beginning, we should be there.
Now, moving on to the next topic, they say, of course, no man is an island, and no port is also an island, unless, of course, it's entirely for transshipment. But if it's not, then the question of the hinterland connectivity becomes crucial. So over to you, Dhruv, again. What would you say today? Which of the modes, road, railway, inland waterways, which of those connectivity modes now constitutes the biggest bottleneck in India?
This is a really controversial question. I'm going to get into a lot of trouble one way or another. But
I hope so. That's what I'm trying to make it interesting.
Great.
Here.
From an India perspective, just statistically speaking, the biggest evacuation currently in terms of mode is our road network. So we have a huge amount of cargo evacuation done by road. Again, I'm going to just clause myself there. I'm now referring to containers.
Yeah.
If I were to now spread that out, we have a phenomenal pipeline grid. So when we deal with petroleum products, which is still a very large percentage of what we do, it moves by pipelines. If we have same with the gas, if we talk about bulk cargoes, it moves by rail. But truly from a cost efficiency point of view, if I stay away from the liquid cargoes and I talk only about containers and I talk about bulk, I would say the bottleneck at the moment would be rail cargo. We have, a prime example of that is a wonderful port we have on the east coast of India. Sanjeev sir would know this very clearly. There's a port called Paradip. It's the biggest port on the east coast of India. It's competing at any given time for the biggest port in India. The biggest bottleneck that we have there is rail evacuation, rail capacity. We just don't have enough of rail capacity. And the single biggest bottleneck there will remain rail. We have a very successful port on the west coast of India called Mundra. It's a beautiful port, private development by the Adani Group. They've done a phenomenal job. And I would say the single biggest bottleneck today would be rail evacuation. So from all multimodal, if I were to look at all the modes, the biggest bottleneck at the moment would be rail. As controversial, as much trouble as I'm going to get into, it is rail.
Not sure if that serves as a consolation, but me coming from Germany, we have a very similar issue with hinterland connectivity. So even talking about valuation of companies, how important is this issue of connectivity when evaluating a port, for example?
Well, it's extremely important, and we've seen that in many countries that you need also that you have the control in the hinterland all to the end station, because if you don't have that, you make a problem. Because you see, for example, the biggest container ships, the ultra-large container vessel that can carry about 24,000 containers. And if you are stopping there at the coastline and not able to actually carry them on and unload them and actually carry them on into hinterland, you have a problem. And if this starts, the sufficiency there is going down, so we don't have logistic, you don't have a digitalization, you don't have a smooth and seamless actually cooperation between either railway or if it's on trailers or trucks or even if it's seaways inland, then you definitely have a problem immediately. And then it can have also the direct impact on the investment and actually on the interest for investor, because then they start to see risk is that this actually port and the operators are actually efficient, will actually deliver what's necessary, and also starting to getting nervous. So this is all the way from the port, from the harbor, and into the last destinations. The place is very important.
Yeah. Vizhinjam, we talked about the potential of transshipment. So I would like to ask you a similar question when it comes to hinterland connectivity. Assuming that those bottlenecks get resolved, do you think that the new ports or the port improvements in India also have the potential to redirect regional trade?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, of course. And I'm just will come back to the point that mentioned about the previous round about the financing instrument. So I really welcome all the government instruments, including PPP and Maritime Development Fund, and also viability gap funding, which really not only government active role as a developer, but also it is kind of a guarantor for foreign investors. Now, Indian government is making investors assured, say you can invest, you can get the profits in India, right? And I think you have to go further in gaining more investments from outside. So what if we have a kind of special shipbuilding zone, like something like special economic zones? If you have more demands, if you generate more business, that it will ensure you can have a more easier connection, more transportation. So financing and investment, all these I think will combine a great picture in India. And I think from government initiatives, and you are really have done a lot of things so far. So I think we will see, great opportunities for India have more active and interconnected inland transportation.
I would now like to talk about an issue that is one of the strengths, at least when we look at it from the outside of India, that is its IT and digital skills. Sanjeev, do you think there is any scope for further reforms to cut down on idle time when it comes to improving digitalization in port operations?
When we talk of logistics, I think the digital platform and integration of the entire movement end to end for real-time kind of operation is a necessity. And I think we have a whole host of platforms which are making it happen. And sooner or later, we would come to a situation where the entire logistics is virtually without any manual intervention. And the way we are doing it, we have, for example, clearances, we have the NLP Marine, which again, Mr. Kota could be able to throw more light on, which and how efficiently it's been working. And the idea is to be able to integrate all the logistics players in the chain, so that the entire process is seamless. And while we talk of the digital connectivity between the various players in the supply chain, with the platforms that we have now, we have a platform called ULIP, where there are going to be API interfaces provided to every player. And with that, the kind of efficiencies end-to-end that we are talking of, we should be able to reach that. And sooner or later, we should be able to get into a situation where we have autonomous ports which run end-to-end without much of a human kind of a intervention. And so that the waiting times and so on are done away with. So hopefully the new ports, the new terminals which come up, that's why the PPP model is important, where the best of the experience which the terminal operators have, they bring it to our projects here. And with the kind of framework, digital framework we've been able to create, we should be able to be better than anyone else.
Hemant, I think that's a good follow-up question to you. When you plan and design new ports, how do you ensure that they are future ready for this completely digital, completely autonomous way of operating?
See, for us, what also makes ports become the gateway to the whole economic system in the country. For us, it is very important that the ports become automated and as digital as possible. For instance, what Sanjeev sir spoke about ULIP, that we have a system called cargoes, where that's already syncing with ULIP. Now, when I use that system from my port, and when I'm taking any cargo to the hinterland, to my customer, through any of the modes of transport. So Dhruv spoke of rail. I mean, he just walked away from speaking more. But either rail or road, the last mile or the first mile, whichever way, depending on things. People, when I give a customer an integrated solution, the customer is very keen that, can I sit in my office and see where my cargo is, where it is moving, what is my ETA, either on receipt or at my destination. When can I tell my customer that with a certain degree of accuracy that my cargo is going to reach there? If all this means that we need to have an automated digital system working flawlessly, and it starts with the port. Starts with the port. We are doing that through cargoes. We have brought it down further onto our other modes of transport, be it rail, be it the first mile, last mile, or the road, in some cases when we carry it. And on the other side, when we take it to across the border, it is absolutely imperative that it works flawlessly.
Eyvind, I think it's obvious how important this data is for operators and their customers. But is it also interesting for international investors to have access to real-time KPIs, data transparency when making investment decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. either if you invest directly in such companies that actually deliver this, but also as a support, as you said, for the operations, because if you're investing in these kind of companies, either it's an operator or it's the port itself or the other parts of the value chain there, it's really important. So I definitely think this is of interest for investors, and I think also not only, as I said, in the operator, even though have the access, but also in these kind of companies, because it's such important to deliver this kind of technology to the ports and operators. So I think that is itself is very interesting for investor to invest in.
Yoon-jung, you're from Korea, also a country that is very technologically advanced. Are there any recommendations that you can give to the Indian side when it comes to digital governance models that should be applied here in India?
I just have only want to echo what my previous panel told us. And actually, the Busan port that I mentioned before, it has fully automated in 2023 or 2. So it made it really helped a lot to regain its status as a global regional hub. So I think you can borrow from the experience from the South Korean port, Busan port, and also I think investments is very important. Not only they gives you the financing, but also they come with technology, know-how, and manpower, education, and so on. So it will enlarge the prospects of India's ports and shipbuilding industry further grow. So,
before we get to the Q&A session with hopefully good questions from the audience, I would like to talk a little bit about the geopolitical environment that we're operating in. We had a session on specifically that topic a couple of hours earlier. So my question would be first to Sanjeev. So how does the government of India balance the need to make sound investment decisions or provide a sound platform for investment decisions of others with geopolitical considerations and the need to create resilient supply chains when it comes to ports? How do you balance those two sometimes contradictory requirements?
I suppose the policy is well laid out, and on the port side, we allow virtually everyone, except for some areas where specific security clearances are required. Otherwise, the investments, the private investment is absolutely welcome. And it is thanks to the fact that we have a very robust kind of a PPP framework, which has evolved with experience and made market friendly, that we are able to get the kind of investments that we require, and the pipeline of projects that we have is pretty robust. Therefore, with the concession agreements that we right now have in place, we are able to get enough capital. And so finance, as far as the port side is concerned, is not been a major challenge. And in a few specific cases where the viability of the project was a bit of a gray area, there the ports themselves have done the basic work in terms of doing the breakwater and so on, so that the terminal operation and actual hands-on where the private efficiencies are required is done by the private operator. So port sector, with experience, we've reached a stage where we have enough players in the market, and most of these terminals which have gone for bid have had pretty attractive kind of bids. And thanks to that, the entire vision of the extra ports that we envision, we should be able to, with the kind of broad PPP framework that we have in place, we should be able to get that money that is required.
Dhruv, earlier today here on the stage, we talked about maritime choke points, geopolitical risks, and the potential for shifting shipping patterns. How do logistics providers, in particular in India, prepare for that, and what consequences could arise from some kind of geopolitical conflict that may shut down some more important shipping lanes?
I have two answers for that. So the first one is I briefly met Mr. Ranjan when we were just walking in, and he said, "Dhruv, you're looking so thin. And the truth is, I mean, in my field of ports, logistics, maritime, since COVID, I probably haven't slept very much. I haven't eaten very much. It's been just a lot of stress and a lot of strain, right? So I think that's the first easy way of answering that. I think we've been in a consistent state of flux for the last 5 years. I think the geopolitical tensions post 22 create a lot of uncertainty in terms of supply chain. How do we cope? If I have a straight answer for you on that one, Matthias, I'm going to be an extremely wealthy man. But I think I think what we've started doing, and this is not just in India, but I think around the world, is we've started building in a lot of capacity and redundancy. So Hemant spoke about it, whether we talk about off-dock capacity, we talk about dock capacity. There's a lot of planning which goes in terms of where we have to start building in redundancies across the supply chain, across the port ecosystem, across the maritime ecosystem. And yes, you've got to build a very, very thick skin because you're going to be, Sanjeev sir is smiling today, but if things were not going as per plan, even if it's not my fault, I would get, pretty much reprimanded for, not moving something fast enough or not managing the efficiencies. But so I think it's a lot of redundancy built in, which is happening across the world. I don't see, unless we really start seeing the geopolitical situation letting up, I think this redundancy being built in terms of maritime supply chains is going to happen because there will be choke points, there will be crisis. We're used to it now. And I think we're doing that by building in redundancy across the supply chain.
Good. Okay, so the old saying, the change is the new constant, I guess that's one thing.
Yep.
And just in case instead of just in time. Although
Yes.
I should let the audience know that Dhruv arrived literally just in time. So he arrived in the ballroom in the moment that we were walking up on stage. So that was certainly just in time,
Yes.
I guess. Now, I would like to open it up to the floor for questions. I believe there are 2 microphones on both sides of the ballroom. A few rules. When I call on you, kindly introduce yourself, just say your name and the organization that you're coming from, and then please be succinct in your question. And we'll probably do a few at a time in order to be more efficient. Oh, and final thing, I would encourage you to address your question to one of the panelists. If you don't do that, I may take the liberty of doing that myself as the moderator, because I believe that we won't have time to have every panelist answer every one of the questions. With that, we'll start with the lady over there, please.
Very good evening to all. And myself, Riya, I am a first year MBA student from Atlas University. So a quick question open to the experts present here for today. So how can India leverage automation and technological advancement in its ports to enhance efficiency, reduce cost, and improve its global maritime competitiveness while preserving its rich maritime heritage?
Good. That's the first question. We'll take one from there, and then I'll let panelists answer.
Yeah. Hi, I'm audible? Yeah. So my name is Anirudh Agrawal from AV Associates Chartered Accountants. So my question is to the regulatory aspect, and also Dhruv, you're open to answer that question. So I've had this discussion across this day with various tech guys. We are talking about improving the optimization, being more resilient in terms of trade. Why don't we introduce blockchain, which will be actually very transparent, and also and that's a question most from the regulatory aspect, right? Because there is a lot of regulatory resistance in introducing blockchain into that. So your opinions on that?
Was that question addressed to somebody in particular?
To the regulatory, Sanjeev.
To Sanjeev. Okay, good. So maybe we start with that, Sanjeev.
I think that's a very important and a critical thing. While we digitize and make the ports smart, which is happening, and we should be able to track containers end to end, which is thanks to ULIP and other platforms which we just mentioned. The other challenges, the bill of lading and the financial documents where blockchains, etc., are going to be critical. Now, we have 3 or 4 examples which are going around. And while the ports are prepared, the banks and some of the other institutions which are important stakeholders in accepting that kind of a technical solution to the physical documentation that they're used to, they have to be on board and they have to be fully satisfied that it works. So it's happened in some geographies across the world. The Indian financial systems are hopefully we should be able to do that. There's some pilots which have been done, but while the logistics part of it, the entire supply chain is IT enabled and digitized. When it comes to some of these financial documents which involve contracts and other legal kind of implications, that acceptability in some of the banks across the board, I think, is work in progress.
We had the question over there related, I guess, to digitalization and efficiencies. Hemant, would you maybe want to say something to that question?
Sorry, could you just...
It was the question of whether we could, maybe you want to repeat it quickly?
Which digital efficiency and automation, along with preserving the cultural heritage.
Look, as we discussed earlier, a lot has been done on digitization at the ports. And I mean, it's not like we have achieved nirvana, right? We will, there is a lot more to be done. And there is no end to it. If, I mean, if someone does something, you don't just play catch up, you try to do better. So I don't think we can ever say that we would achieve, we would reach a place where we want to be. It's a journey and it will continue. So the efficiency that we'll get out of that will be more visible in the economy, while you continue to keep your heritage working. I mean, and the more you earn, the more you can put behind your heritage, right? It's not that both can't coexist in parallel. I don't know if that answers the question.
We'll continue with the lady over there.
Namaste, I'm Poshika, a researcher at the Geostrata. My question is to Mr. Kotak. What are the chief technical and operational barriers to accelerating freight train speeds and last-mile rail connectivity at India's major ports? And how can advanced digitalization and private investment help us to match the logistic efficiency?
I'm going to ask you for a short answer to a very broad question.
I'm taking the second one first. And it probably answers the other lady's point and maybe the blockchain point as well. First of all, I think what people don't realize is that the shipping and logistics industry, especially the one which deals with global trade, is very process dense. I can see Mr. Shetty here. Mr. Shetty is, customs and DG and, all these different things. And he'll be the first person to tell you that there is so much of process density. There's, whether it's a bill of lading, whether it's the customs, whether it's the various processes, there's a lot of process flow. Now, I'm going to use the word of legacy, and I'm more than legacy. I'm going to talk about our DNA. We Indians are inherently quite sharp. We have the ability to understand processes really well. Now, if we can, I think the government has a role to play in terms of what we can do in terms of converting that digital pie into blockchains, into coins, into tokens, into ledgers, nodes. And then, in my view, also apply AI, use a lot of our capability as Indians to convert that into, AI agents. So there's a lot of agentic work that we as Indians can do. So I think government can play a role in terms of giving us a regulatory pathway like they did in case of UPI and payments. I think they can do that for us in trade. And I think we can apply ourselves very effectively as Indians onto the agentic and process-rich part of it. And I think that service, that AI agent piece can really be exported and can become a huge, job driver, a huge revenue driver for, all of us in the room. The train piece, high-speed train connectivity, I think is a very complicated question that's going to take a lot of time because that has to do with land acquisition and a whole bunch of other elements. So I won't cover that, but that's a very complicated question. Will take a long time to answer.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I know that there are more questions. I'm sorry we won't have time for you to ask them now, but I would suggest that you shamelessly grab any panelists you would like to talk to as soon as they get off the stage. I would like to thank my panelists very much for this fascinating, interesting discussions. Yes, please give them a round of applause. There will be so much more to talk about, and I think we've seen that this is not just a vision, it's very much history in the making, so I'm very curious to follow closely how these chapters, the next chapters of the Indian maritime industry, Indian ports, are being written over the years to come. Thank you very much.